Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. I am your host, Shayna, and I am back with yet another episode of One Track Record. If you are listening to me for the very first time, welcome. Again, I'm your host, Shayna, and you are currently listening to the Unhealed Trauma cassette tape side B for the men. Now, ladies, because I know you're here, and that's okay. But like I warned the men for cassette side A, we are going to be respectful to them in both the comment section and the live chat, right? No heckling, okay? No too loud of an amen in the comments, okay? If anything, we are here for them as emotional support, which is a great segue in what I will be talking about today. So, if you just happen to be a man tuning in today and you've already listened to the cassette tape side A for this, for the unhealed trauma, you may have noticed that I had quite a few lists, right? Now, I'm going to do you a solid because in today's world, we have men kind of talking badly about women. We have women talking badly about men. But collectively, as all this is happening, nobody's ever talking about the betterment in a way that's not condescending, one, or two, relatable, right? There seems to be a lack of that, just a tad bit. Well, that's why I'm here. And again, I have to give a disclaimer. I am not a licensed psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist, none of that, okay? I am just a millennial with access to the internet and a passion to see people do better. That's all, okay? And of course, what I am speaking of today is also a touch of research and life experience, okay? So, without further ado, let's get started. So, some of you may be wondering where I was going with this episode for today, because with all the lists and things that were spoken of inside A for Women, I didn't want to take the easy route and just take the list and flip them to be, appropriate for men. I, in my personal experience, understand that it should be more of a cookie cutter type episode if I'm going to cater to men, right? So, one of the ways I cater to the women on the other side of this was what it would look like, or the most common occurrence when it comes to traumatized, unhealed women. But now I come on side B to ask, how does the traumatized, unhealed man act? Because in order to fix a problem, you kind of have to identify it. And this, again, is not to attack men, but we got to call a spade if we want to fix anything. So, again, how does the traumatized, unhealed man act? Well, in my opinion, there's low levels of emotional intelligence. So, as we fix our lives, as we actively want better for ourselves, we have to come across something called emotional intelligence. And this I did not mention inside A simply because women, we have a bit of an unfair advantage when it comes to this. Why? Because in the society and in the world that we live in, where everything for the most part stems from childhood, women have always been cultivated to feel their feelings. Even though they're called emotional, they're still allowed to feel their feelings. Where men, starting from childhood as boys, were told to always toughen up, suck it up, right? Well, we need to see the impacts of that, of low levels of emotional intelligence. So, what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is the ability to perceive, process, and express the emotions of oneself and others in various interpersonal relationships. In layman terms, I need to feel the feels in order for me to, let's say, quote unquote, get over, like we spoke in side A, in order to get over things emotionally, we have to go through them. We have to feel them. We have to go through them to get over it. Now, why is it important to have emotional intelligence? It's important to have emotional intelligence because it's a sign of successful verbal and nonverbal communication when it comes to receiving the needs and wants of oneself. In layman terms, in order for you to get what you need, whether it just be generally in life, when it comes to a romantic relationship, business partnership, whatever type of relationship, right? Because we're not limiting ourselves on this channel. We'll talk about it all. I need to be able, as a person, as a human being, to express it in healthy ways and to also realize that you cannot leave everything to assumption because how one was raised, the other may not be raised that way. Or how one person was parented, the other person may not be parented that way. So, what is the second sign of an traumatized, unhealed man? What does that look like? Two, you may fall under unfavorable characteristics of certain attachment styles. So some of you are probably scratching your head like, yo, I don't know what sis is talking about. Shay, you just did your big one. You sure you're not a psychologist? And to that I say, I promise I'm not. So, what is an attachment style? An attachment style is an unconscious way, again, usually stemming from childhood, in which you communicate with others, and it's usually conveyed primarily through actions. It also requires direct dialogue to gain clarity of said actions. So, I'll further explain it this way, right? Let's say that you may come across some issues unspoken and you may feel tension, whether it's at home with a spouse or a family member, maybe it's at work. And even though you may never speak about it, you know you feel what you feel. You may feel a way around certain people, you may feel certain people acting strangely towards you. And the question why is in the air, but you may have different ways or ideas on how to go about it. This has a lot to do with attachment style. So, what are the four main attachment style types? We have the first one, the secure attachment. This person, in any relationship type, experiences a balance of mutual respect, honesty, and feels the relationship is equally beneficial, especially with a power dynamic. So let's take a look at the secure attachment style and what it would look like in different aspects of your day to day interpersonal relationships. So, a person with a secure attachment style, let's say in a romantic relationship, a spouse or a girlfriend, because we're speaking of men here, a secure attachment style for them would not equate to an abuse in power, being that you think yourself more highly than the other person. It's always going to feel mutually beneficial. There's a respect there, there's honesty, there's honor in connecting yourself with this person. You understand that you represent this person even when you're not with them, all right? And this goes the same towards the workplace. Think of how the workplace, especially in 2024, how certain aspects like social media, what you post, what you engage in, could ultimately be linked back to your job, your corporation that you work for. They make sure to have those HR videos available for you, letting you know that social media, even though you may not be connected to a social media's company page, a Facebook page, an Instagram, a Twitter, none of that. You may have just your own personal page account. But let's say if you said something outlandish enough to land you going viral on the internet and it gets back to your company. That's not a very good representation. It's not a mutual respect because you realize that whether you like it or not, the relationship you have, whether with your spouse or the company you work for, people like to associate things. So if you think this way and they keep you, is that how the company feels? Aha. So hopefully that brings clarity on that type of attachment style. Let's go to the next one. The anxious attachment style. Hmm. This person may appear as clingy, needy, and may need constant reassurance to feel validated, seen, appreciated, and respected. Now, we can go about this a couple of ways as far as explanations. I'm going to go as far as to say relationships to start with. Men, this is why I don't come on camera for these anymore. Men, I'm pretty sure enough of you in this chat or just in the bushes during the replay understand an anxious attachment style because pop culture has actually encouraged such behavior and it's not exactly healthy. So, what are the ways in which today's pop culture encourages this? Well, you may experience a relationship where a person constantly needs a text back, a phone call, has to constantly check in, right? Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially if you're married, because a person can just genuinely be concerned for your well being. But the anxious attachment style, it all comes down to intention. Why does this particular person want to constantly feel validated, seen, and appreciated and respected? Is it because they assume that you may give it to somebody else? Do they throw accusations or do you throw accusations? Hmm. Do you maybe come across as a bit callous, cold, unforgiving, resentful to this person? To the point where when things do feel good and maybe you've apologized for certain things that have taken place, do they feel that they constantly need to keep you in that? So they want to constantly feel that it's a permanent change and not just a temporary change? There's a lot to unpack there. This also goes for the person in the workplace. Maybe you are the manager that has everybody walking around on eggshells. Maybe you're the manager or you know the manager where it's not exactly appreciated, or you're not appreciated for all the effort that you've put in to the company. And maybe there's been a mass layoff or rumors of people being laid off. How do you come across the people? Right? So it's never really placing the blame on just one person. All of this really just stems from communication and a lack thereof. You see, when it comes to communication, both verbal and nonverbal, what we like to do as creatures of habit, whenever there's too many X factors, too many unknowns, based on our reality and our perception through the life we've lived through our eyes, we like to try and fill in the gaps. So, as an anxious attachment style, if I want to know and feel loved or validated, I want to know and have it confirmed that you think about me even if I'm not there, which again is completely fine. But where does it stem from? See the importance? Now let's go to the next one. We have the dismissive avoidant, or DA. This person may come across as aloof and tends to avoid intimacy and appears emotionally distant. Now, men, I am guilty for this one. And I have worked alongside friends, family, and even people whom I've dated so that I would shift from this and get closer to the secure attachment style. Now, just because you may appear as aloof or uncaring, unbothered, doesn't necessarily mean that that's so. But again, you have to look at the source as to why somebody may act like this. If I go to a psychologist, a therapist, and they are asking particular questions, they're going to usually bring things and redirect it back to childhood. Childhood is very important when it comes to personalities, when it comes to a lot of things. Now, let's look at the dismissive avoidant in a relationship, a romantic relationship. This may be a person who is maybe not one for many words. He may He may shrug his shoulders, he may speak more with nonverbal communication, even though he's very loving, but to the rest of the world, he may not appear as so. There's nothing necessarily wrong with being reserved, but when somebody comes to you and communicates with you that they may have certain needs, this also goes back to the idea of love languages, which I've spoken about. If you haven't already, go ahead and check that out. But love languages is not just a way for you to feel validated when it comes to having somebody show you love. It also is important, love languages, how you show somebody you love them. It's a two-way street. So when, let's say, a dismissive avoidant may come across an anxious, you may start to see the clash between the clingy needy and the aloof and the person who avoids intimacy. Let's go to the next one. This is the fourth one. We have the fearful avoidant. So much like the DA or the dismissive avoidant, the fearful avoidant can also seem to appear as emotionally distant, and they too avoid intimacy. However, the source may come from poor self esteem or deeply rooted traumas. Now, men, I know that women in this day and age don't exactly allow the grace that they give each other as friends or as a mother would give to a child. But I need you to understand, for the fearful avoidant, this is more so of the person who has suffered from so much previous trauma, whether it be too many failed relationships, people doing them dirty left and right. Maybe it was their parents who may have inflicted so much trauma or allowed so many triggering things to happen during your childhood that you start to actually psych yourself out of being loved or having your needs met in adulthood. This is very dangerous. Why? Because the fearful avoidant, keyword avoidant, avoiding things out of fear because you think you deserve it, even though that's not what you want, can leave you feeling very empty and constantly having a void that you need to fill. Which leads me to the third common occurrence displayed of a traumatized, unhealed man. Your unhealed traumas that show in your attachment style may lead to self destructive or self sabotaging behaviors. Very heavy. So, what destructive behaviors take place from not elevating your emotional intelligence and not healing from traumas and triggers? You ready? You may self sabotage, isolate, overindulge, or form addictions. However, you should not self diagnose. Please go to therapy if you struggle with processing your emotions and know that you are valid. I don't care how many podcasts, how many YouTube channels, how many this, how many that, how many songs that are played with women bashing men. You are valid. And what I need people to understand, but specifically men, I'm not saying that you should be a doormat, but if you do have enough unhealed trauma that triggers you and cripples you from feeling that you don't have to necessarily work hard to be valued as a human. Not for you don't have to overindulge in anything. You don't have to overindulge or work obsessive obscene hours just so that you don't have to come home to deal with somebody who only sees the worth in what you bring home on a paycheck. You don't have to be addicted to corn to feel something in your life. You don't have to be addicted to alcohol. You don't have to isolate yourself because you feel like maybe nobody understands you. These are self sabotaging activities. In fact, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Some of you that are listening right now and have been listening since the genesis of this channel back in July are probably wondering why I do what I do on now a bi weekly basis, especially when it comes to these cassette tape episodes. You want to know why I do these? Well, once upon a time, I had a male friend who was in a very deep, dark place. And he didn't have anybody to talk to him or validate him just from him being a human being with emotions allowed to process. I was in Long Island. He was in Jersey. And one fateful night into the wee hours of the morning, he called me and let me know that he wanted to end it all. And had it not been for the grace of God to stop him from doing what he was about to do, I wouldn't have been congratulating him on his first child just a few months ago. So, if ever you feel that what you indulge in is more comforting than people, I think it's okay to search for avenues and ways to receive the help that you need. This is not to shame you. This is to be real. In 2024, we don't need any band-aid solutions. If you need stitches, get stitches. There's many men out here that are bleeding on people who didn't cut them. Please go ahead and feel your feelings. Whether it be a road trip where you scream the entire time, maybe you just need to go ahead and call a friend. I don't even think men necessarily call each other on the phone anymore just to see if each other are okay. I know like some men gossip and stuff, but that's not exactly asking if you're okay. Let me move on. So, what does it look like when you are closer towards healing and you're working towards a secure attachment style? I've comprised my own list of 9 things. And here goes number 1. You begin to communicate to actively listen and observe and not just to be heard and be seen. Confidence is key. I went to school for obvious reasons. I won't disclose what school. And in this school, I took two communication courses. And being that at one point in my life, I wanted to be a speech pathologist. Some of you may not know what that is. If you do, kudos. But what amazes me is that communication courses are not taught as if everybody should know how to communicate. Isn't that sad? I mean, think about that. Out of everything you could learn in school, they don't want to necessarily teach you about taxes. They don't want to teach you about money management. They don't even want to teach you about how to communicate with others. Deep, right? But if they're not ready or willing to learn how to communicate, do you see how this leaves you susceptible to others' demons, to other people's inner demons? We spoke about the idea of being under narcissistic abuse. We spoke about that in the previous cassette tape episodes. If you haven't already, check that out. But let's go to the next one. Number 2, when your needs and your wants are not met, you're able to voice concerns without threats or insults being thrown. If there is an ultimatum that you're giving, it won't be to control the person, but to value yourself. Intention is everything. This is also something that we spoke about that narcissists tend to do. And again, I don't want anybody diagnosing people with narcissistic personality disorder. That is very irresponsible. But as I always say, we can speak about tendencies. Okay? Number 3, you understand the importance of accepting boundaries and also giving boundaries. Another thing that narcissists are not able to do. Like I've said in a previous cassette tape episode, if you really want to see if somebody has narcissistic tendencies and possibly, keynote possibly, narcissistic personality disorder, give them a boundary and see how they react. Oh, a narcissist will lose their mind in rage if you give them a boundary. Super defensive. Okay. Number 4, you understand that how people treat you isn't as personal as we perceive it. A healed you isn't necessarily a healed them. So, a man that is secure, a man that is confident, a man that is working on his healing, because nobody is 100% perfect. Let's just get that out of our minds right now. Ladies, stop expecting your man to be Jesus because you prayed to Jesus for him. Okay, that's not going to happen. I'm sorry to pop your bubble. Because I know y'all are listening. I know y'all are over here. Gosh. What I say about heckling the men? I saw you elbowing. I saw you elbow him, sis. Stop it. Behave. Now, like I said in the cassette tape side A for this unhealed trauma, when you are a person who is actively working on healing yourself, or you have been healed from certain traumas and triggers, and you decide to make it a lifestyle, you're going to piss off a lot of unhealed people. Why? Because they can't abuse you the same way maybe they used to or they plan to. Hmm. You know what? Let's go to number 5. Number 5, you resist the urge to over explain yourself when it hasn't even been required to do so. Let a no be a no and a yes be a yes. Men. I know men are actually a little better at standing on business and saying no, in my opinion, from what I've seen. And why do I say this? Let me use this example. So, men that are listening to this right now, those that are married, remember how in the olden days, as I like to say it, there used to be a lot of door to door salesmen, people who may knock on your door to, let's say, offer you solar panels. That's more of the modern stuff that's going on anyway. Or perhaps they're offering you some type of cable, internet provider, stuff like that. Now, women, because we like to shop, as it's been said before by many, and they know how to get us with a good deal. Every woman loves a good deal. I'm sure men do too. But women be shopping, women be shopping. Now, instead of women being taught to stand on business, we like to hear people out. We have more of an emotional intelligence. Sometimes it's just so high that we forget that sometimes operating in emotion all the time can get us swindled and hoodwinked. But going back to let a no be no and a yes be yes, men can kind of sniff out when people take advantage of vulnerabilities. Hence the idea of the avoidant attachment styles, where if I don't come across as vulnerable, it's least likely that I'll be taken advantage of, even if that means I isolate myself and self sabotage. You see where I'm going with this? So the man might step behind his woman behind the door and be like, "Oh, nah, what you selling? Nah, we not interested." Even if he is interested, he'll tell the person no because he knows he should probably do more research and not be swindled in his emotions over a deal. You hear what I'm saying? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Very interesting, right? How women are wired versus men. But collectively, when we play in the roles in the respective roles that we should, how a household can be so united as a united front to the world. Do you see now why they're trying to tear up the household? Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because as a single woman, if I were to run a household, I'd probably be swindled if you told me you had a good deal, especially from Verizon, expensive Verizon. Come inside. You want some lemonade? Or nah? Okay, let's just go to number 6. You're aware that healing is not a straight upward slope, but it's a lifetime process with ebbs and flows. Mhm. So, healing isn't necessarily a straight line to success. It's going to come in zigzags. You're going to feel certain things trigger you, whether it be other people's behavior. And I'll give you this one. I'll give you an example, right? Let's say you are, for argument purposes, let's say you are a fearful avoidant. Now, again, the fearful avoidant, they might psych themselves out of having something good in fear that it will be tarnished or ruined. Kind of sucks, right? But knowing that behind that fearful avoidant probably comes some trauma, some things from their childhood. I have to actively, if I'm that fearful avoidant, for the rest of my life or until I affirm that I no longer want to live like this and knock it out the ballpark, that I'm going to scare myself out of relationships, romantic ones. I can scare myself out of friendships. I can scare myself out of marriage. Ooh, that's a big one. And that is a big one amongst men. And I'm not saying that marriage should be the end goal for everybody if you don't want that. Because I know what the Most High intends, but some people may have different ideas of what marriage is. I know what the Most High says about it, but again, how I was raised and what I believe in is not the same as the next person. And I understand that while it may not seem right to me, it is what it is. I may not have to tolerate things, but I can accept it. But it's not going to be so easy as I wake up one day and now all of a sudden I'm tired of being alone. So I'm going to watch 1,000 YouTube videos about how to become a better man and how to become a better this and how to become a better that. And I'm going to read 6 self-help books. No, I'm sorry. It's if anybody tries to sell that to you, they're probably going to be slapped on the back of their neck with a sandal that my Jesus walked down the roads of Damascus. I promise you. Because they've swindled you. They took your money and they've swindled you. Right? I don't care if it's SA, where you were a child and people allowed things to happen to you. I don't care if it's domestic trauma. Okay? It's going to take time, and that's okay. But the person that you're going to be with, that you allow yourself to be with, is going to allow you to feel secure knowing that on Tuesday, you might have a really good day. And on Wednesday night, you might be triggered by a phone call by the person who has done you wrong. Or you may remember a certain scent from the person who did something to you. Maybe the trauma comes from a parent where bringing up something from your childhood, seeing Certain things, maybe pictures, have brought up certain emotions for you. Doesn't matter. This is going to be a lifetime commitment. And I think you deserve to feel your best and to work on you before anybody else or worry about what anybody else is doing. You're worth it. Which leads me to 7. When you communicate, you use more I language instead of you language and apologize when necessary. Mm. Key word in this: necessary. In my humble opinion and from personal experience, people who suffer from anxious attachment styles have a tendency to over apologize for everything. And part of over apologizing may stem from childhood triggers where you were constantly put to blame. Hmm. And that also goes to the over explaining. Let's go to 8. You believe wholeheartedly that you deserve love and don't need constant validation or reassurance from multiple sources and avenues to feel that way. A man who is walking towards or is walking within a secure attachment style doesn't need a million awards at work and can clap for other people who have won awards, bonuses, all of that. Not saying that you shouldn't strive to get them, but when you're secure and you're not insecure, you're okay with others winning. You can clap for them too. Same as relationships. Maybe all of your friends are in relationships, but you're not. But you know, you being secure, you're up next. Eventually. Mm-hmm. The love and admiration has to come from you first, because I'll tell you this, men. A lot of people, especially men who are insecure, that want everybody to clap for them, what they don't understand is when you work towards success in every area of your life, in order to get there, a lot of people, especially in the beginning, are not going to clap for you. They probably won't clap for you until you reach the finish line. So are you going to wait for people to clap for you in order to be successful, or are you going to go ahead and get it and stand on business? I'm just saying. Let's go to number 9. You know you don't have to wait to be completely healed before entering a new relationship or experiencing a new life event. Who you meet or what you go through are to help you elevate. How you respond determines your outcomes. So, I'll give you an example as far as the life event. Let's say you're a man, you're already in a relationship, you're already in a marriage. Some of you may be stressing yourselves out on maybe having a child on the way. Completely understandable, especially if you're a new time parent. I kudos to you, okay? Because it's not an easy job. Do I have children? No. Have I had my fair share of taking care of other people's children in different stages of childhood development? Of course. Or else why would I be talking about this? Which I know is the reason why it's so scary. But if you enter into the situation and you are not secure in who you are right now, I want you to know that there's always hope. There is always opportunity for growth because, like I mentioned before, nobody's perfect. No situation is necessarily perfect. And if anybody tries to convince you that their relationship, their job, or anything is perfect, they're Delulu. They have an all season pass to Delulu land. Okay? Not Disney World, not Disneyland. They got an all season pass to Delulu land. But when you are willing to go through the ebbs and flows of your healing journey, part of the benefits of even a situation like that, where a new life event like having your first child may seem scary, do you know that there's benefits? Probably more benefits than setbacks to having children that mass media or anybody else won't really tell you about. Even science confirms it. How do I know this? I told you guys, I do research all the time. I'm not going to list them all now. If you want to, you can hit me up for that. But one of the best things about having children is that you get to right the wrongs from your childhood and you help yourself heal while building up someone else. And that is the most selfless thing you could possibly do. And as I make my way towards the end of this episode, I want to leave you with some things that might help out for my men that are triggered. I wrote this down for the women in side A, but I want to let you know of it too because you are loved, you are valued as a member, a family member of the track stars. So here are 4 common triggers for an unhealed man that you may want to save in case this applies, because these are kind of red flags of deeper rooted issues that may be unspoken of. 1, if you're triggered by being told what to do, you may have had a problem stemming from childhood of feeling that you've always been controlled. If you feel like you've always have been told what to do, maybe that you don't do anything right, you may feel that you're being controlled. And I'm not saying that trigger responses are bad. Trigger responses are the body's way of letting you know that something is not right. Okay? Let's go to number 2. If you're unable to handle conflict, this might be a trigger from your childhood where you were raised in an emotionally unstable or explosive surroundings. Number 3, if you are triggered by being complimented, you may have been overly criticized as a child. And last, if you are triggered by the idea of being vulnerable, you may have been a child that didn't feel safe emotionally because you were shamed or ridiculed. But before I go, I want to let it be known that whether you're in a romantic relationship, a business partnership, a friendship, etc., if the ship doesn't float, let it sink unless you're a parent. One of the telltale signs of a person who has dealt with a lot of trauma and is unable to be released from said trauma is the idea of trying to, again, over explain overshare or even try to convince people of their worth by how much they're willing to put up with nonsense. But when you value yourself and you have a secure attachment and you are secure in who you are, you realize that how you're treated is a reflection of what you feel you deserve. What you put up with is a direct it's a direct correlation of what you think you deserve. If you know in your heart of hearts you are in a situationship, if you're in a marriage, if you're in a relationship, if you're in a situationship, if you're in a work relationship, business partnership, friendship, whatever, and you have communicated effectively at all costs your needs, your wants, and they are not being met, again, where you don't necessarily have to throw an ultimatum to control them, but you've given them one to affirm that you're not about to play with what you know you deserve, it's time to let it go. It just might be time to let it go. Another thing that I wanted to bring about, sometimes when dealing with trauma, the body will let us know what the source is. How do I know this? Oh, when I tell you I do research and learn from life experiences, I mean that, track stars. So here's something I learned from an esthetician and from a masseuse. Some of the ways that trauma or triggers may show up in the body and how you should pay attention to them. Here's 8 things. If you feel a sensation when experiencing a trauma or trigger in your chest, it's fear. If it's the stomach, it's your intuition. If it's your entire body, it may be happiness. If you feel it in your head, it may be anger. If you feel it in your muscles through tension, it may be anxiety. If you feel it in your face, it could be shame. If you feel the sensation in your mouth, pause, it may be disgust, absolute disgust. And 8, last but not least, if you feel it in your throat, it could be sadness. I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for your continuous support of the channel. Great things are happening. I can feel the healing process for some of you. And if you're not quite there yet, it's okay. This channel is really here for open dialogue, open discussion, self reflection, feeling the feelings, all of the things. I will catch you guys later. And you know where to reach me. Okay. Consider me Kim Possible. I love you guys. Have a great rest of your day.